Hey friends, this is Ifa. Welcome back to another reading journal update video. And today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in September last year. That means 2024. I know that I am very late to update my reading journal. If you're following me for a while or watching my videos, you know I have been very sick. So there is a lot of things happening last year as well. So I'm little late, not little, very late to update my September reading journal. Let's talk about the first page that I made for this setup, which is the cover page. And if you know me, I like cover pages in everything. And here I'm going to use some autumnal inspired stationeries from Paper Monogatari. And the reason behind choosing this theme is basically in September I wanted to go with autumnal theme, and I was gifted a whole collection from her. I've been using her collections last year as well, so let's start with this die cut sticker, which is basically a pumpkin spice latte with pumpkin. And for the decorations behind these stickers, that means I'm going to layering a lot of papers underneath. I'm using some washi paper patterns from Paper Monogatari here, like this beautiful flower pattern and also this cursive writing pattern. Here I wanted to use the washi tapes that I made, which is basically a book pages washi tape, and it has the coffee stains, and I think it goes perfectly with this collection. And for the title, I'm using hard stickers to finish up the whole spread. I sometimes like to go with maximal scrapbooking styles in my reading journal, but I find my style in lesser elements in the collages. So you might see that each of the cover pages look kind of similar when it comes to scrapbooking, and the center is more gathered out and the rest of the pages looks a bit empty. But I think I like this kind of style to go with both minimal and maximal at the same time, to be honest. And I don't know how can I explain this, but I sort of like how this kind of little scrapbooking styles turn out in these cover pages. I hope that makes sense. Besides the cover page, I am going to make a dashboard spread where I will write all the book names which I read in September. And for this dashboard spread, I am going to use the exact same kind of stationeries that I used in the cover page. And this is a little simple spreads that I always make to see all the books at once, and this is inspired from Heda of Mochi Bujo. While making the collage here, I kinda made some mistakes, like making the lines at first, which tends to make the washi stickers shows a little weird. So I kinda managed it with this pattern papers underneath so that it do pop up without the lines that I made in the first place. For the titles, I'm going to go with books I read, and I'm using the alphabet stamps, and I think these stamps looks little similar to the font that has been used in the cover page's title, and I kind of like how this was turning out. And in the middle of the box, I kind of spaced out 7 boxes here and colored them with a beige color, which is one of my favorite colors so far from the Crayola Super Tip marker. In September, I read 7 books. And this is the highest books that I read in a month. I think I was a little crazy to read books in September. It was a little warm month. Also, it was raining a lot, so I think I was very inspired to finish those books which I chose for September. And let's talk about the books that I read. So the first book that I read is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, who is an Asian American writer, and this is one of the best book that I read in this year so far, and I absolutely like how the book started, and it was very interesting throughout the whole book from the starting to the end of the book. So I would recommend you to read, and it's one of the finest book that I read so far, as I have told you already. And the cover looks really nice. As you can see, it's yellow, and I wanted to go with some yellow stationeries. Let's talk about the stationeries a little bit, then we will talk about the books later. So here I'm using some yellow stationeries from Ikigai Puppy, and these are basically the sunflower stickers from her, and I also used some butterfly stickers here as well. I am going to use some washi tapes, which is basically some plain washi tapes, some grid washi tapes, and the tartan pattern washi tape, which I made last year November. And I believe this washi tapes goes with any kind of neutral or warm toned color palettes. And for the title, I'm going to go with the silicone alphabet stamps, which is one of my favorite. It is pretty large. If you're using it in your A5 journal, it covers a lot of spaces, and which I want for the reading journal pages, because I want to show up the titles and the writer name with block letters. And here I'm using the chrome yellow color. It was looking little dull here, so I used this orange color to fill up the space from that stamp ink. And I absolutely like how this spread was turning out. So let's talk about the books a bit. It is a satirical novel and a story of a fake writer who pretends to be a dead Asian writer. So if you don't want me to talk about a bit more about it, please skip to the next chapter from here. So basically, this book has a writer who is white, and she pretends to be her dead Asian writer friend. And the Asian writer was writing something about Asian culture, and the white writer knew about it. And when the Asian writer was dead, she kind of stole her writing from her laptop, and the story begins from here. It was the starting, and it's already very interesting, to be honest. And next, she got a lot of problems during this book release and also after the book release. So it is a very chaotic life she lives afterwards. So I would recommend you to read this book because it's one of my favorites so far. I'm definitely giving this book 5 stars because it's really amazing to read the whole book from the beginning to the end. And here I am going to write a bit of points from this book in the left column underneath the cover. So that's it for this book. And the next book that I read is a very famous and well-known book in the readers community, and this is A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is my first book from Sarah J. Maas, and I have the physical books, which is basically from my sisters, and I was very interested to read this book because of the cover and also all the comments from other readers. So it was very fun to read the book. To be honest, I like the cover so much, but it's red and I don't have a lot of stationeries which contains red, but as I know the pattern of books, like it will have some yellow and red, I kind of gathered some stickers from my own shop, which is basically from a collection called Love Yourself, and this is one of my favorite line art collection that I made for my shop. And I also used a few washi tapes here, like the grid washi tape and also some book pages washi tape to decorate this spread. I'm going to write a lot about this book, so I don't need too much spaces to decorate here. I'm using a rating star stickers from my shop as well, and I am very happy to make these stickers and use them on my reading journal because it kind of makes my life easier to have the ratings in this reading journal. And I think if you have a stamp of rating or a sticker, it kind of saves a lot of time for this kind of review spreads. For the title, I'm going to use the silicone large alphabetic stamps, and I'm going to use a deep red and chrome orange color here to match out with this cover page. For this book review, I'd say I'll give it 5 stars because it was pretty well written and I love how the story was going and how it ends. It was a complete story for that book specifically. Oh, I'm glad that I chose these stickers because it matches to this cover of this book and also the title. I think I have noticed it while I was making this spread in January, or I think it was a very nice choice. Let's talk about the book a bit. I knew that it is a very famous book and I was very interested to read the whole book. So in the beginning of this book, it has a clear map of the states or the kingdoms of this fantasy book. So the main character from this book is Farah, who's a human being, not a fairy or angel, but for a specific reason she was kept hostage by angels. So that's how this story was starting, and I'm not going to talk about much of it because it will give you a lot of spoiler, but I think this book was pretty nice for me because I don't like fantasy genre, so I think it's a very good book for me to start. So that's the book review that I can tell right now because I don't want to give you any spoiler from this book. And I had a lot to write about it, as you can see. And that's it for this book review page. And I think I like this book a lot and also this review. So that's this spread. And the next book that I read is the second book from this series, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. From this specific book, the whole story turned from one to another. Definitely it has a lot of things ongoing from both of the books, and you will get a lot of things while reading it. And I think this book or this series are written very well to describing everything. Like when you're reading, you will get a mindset of this whole story, like from one quote to another quote, what's happening, who's the characters are, etc. And the details are pretty good, I believe. And for this second book, which is very thicker, and I kind of listened to the audiobooks because it's a lot to read and I didn't have much time, and the narrator was pretty good in my opinion, so it definitely gave me the hook to listen to the end. And for this book, I would say that I had a lot to write, but while I was making the decorations first, I kind of missed some spaces here while writing, to be honest. But definitely I write a lot in the first book of this series, and I did have a little bit of writing for the second book as well, but I sort of decorated a bit. So here I'm using the washi tapes from Paper Monogatari's Botanist collection, and also some PET washi tapes from Notebook Therapy, which is these butterflies, and also some washi tapes which are the stamps from the same collection. And I think it looks pretty nice with both of these washi tapes, and it was looking very elegant in my opinion, as I have this cover page which is a bit teal and yellow on it. I chose this whole collection. I also included some calligraphic lettering here, which I'm not that good, to be honest, and I think I practiced very less in last 3 years, and that's why my lettering style is getting a little boring. And here I have quote out "Don't let the hard days win" from this book. I don't like how this quotation space turned out, to be honest, and I really wanted to add something to cut off some spaces here, so that's why I chose this space to write something on it, but later I really hated it. Anyways, that's this book here, and I have given it 5 stars because I really enjoyed how this story was going. This is a very romantic and fantastic story, and I was kind of investing a lot of time to read this series because it's getting very interesting. So that's the third book that I read, and the next 2 books that I read is basically a series that I've been reading from the first quarter, and this is the Cleopatra Fox mystery series from C.J. Archer. I've been spending a lot of time in this series because I want to finish this series as soon as possible, but this story was getting very slower and very repetitive, and I'm getting very bored with this series. So at this point here I'm going to write the review for book number 4 and 5 together because it's kind of repetitive and I didn't think that I need too much space to write for this books. And these books are basically Murder at the Dressmaker Salon and Murder at the Debutante Ball. Here is a girl called Cleopatra who is basically a private detective, and she started this business after she started to stay with her uncle's hotel in London, and that's how this story begins in the first book, and this is the book number 4. So basically the story is repetitive, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but if you want to read it from the beginning, I would say start from the series 1 because you need to know what happens to her in the beginning to know about her a bit and also the characters as well. So in this story, it was little interesting from the previous 2 books, to be honest, because here in this book she kind of get to know about her feelings with her colleague or an ex-hotel manager, and she kind of recognized by police, and she was getting a lot of murder cases to solve, and both of the books has similar styled murder cases solving, but definitely I like to listen to her private life, to be honest, because it's a series of murders, but while the murder cases were solving, she was kind of investing her personal life with a guy called Harry, who is the manager, which I've talked earlier, and somehow she is getting into a love affair with him in this story. So I was kind of investing my time to know the ending because there is a lot of problems in her life and it's basically not from the modern worlds. So definitely there is a lot of restrictions as a woman in that period when the story is from. So definitely I would recommend you to read this book. And for the decoration, as these books has similar kind of colors, like you can see that the first book has these red color and the title is written with some green color, and also the second book has green color and written the title in red. So it was pretty interesting to use some similar colored stationeries for this red. Here I'm using some stickers from Ikigai Papier, and I kind of thought that I should go with the similar colors. As you can see, I used some vice versa colors in both of these reds, and also I used a heart rating sticker in one, and another is a star to make a balance and keep a space in between this spread. So that's the whole thing, and I wrote a little bit because I've been writing a lot about this book in this journal and I didn't want to waste too much time thinking about these stories in each page, so I kind of combined it and I like how it turned out. I'm giving 3.5 stars for these two books because it definitely has something interesting, but as I'm reading from the very first series, it's not connecting with me much. But definitely later in this series, there is a lot of things happening, and I liked the next books, which I will talk about in the next reading update video. So stay tuned. So that's it for this spread, and the next spread that I read is Beach Read by Emily Henry. For this book, I wanted to go with some beach vibes and some vacation vibes into this spread, so I wanted to use some travel inspired stickers that I made last year, which is the traveling diary. I'm also going to use a seashell sticker sheet here because it was inspired from beaches, so I wanted to go with this summer vibed spread. But in the cover of this book doesn't have too much colors, like it has some blue, red and yellow, which is very common in book covers, and I didn't want to use the same colors repeatedly, so I'm going to use this alphabet stickers which has this muted colors which are similar to this cover, but it's not that exact same color scheme, so I thought that I would just go with some various colors here. But I kind of like how the whole spread was turning out, to be honest. It has some little bit of pink, yellow, green, brown going on in the spread, and also I used a memo page from Paper Monogatari's autumnal collection. It has the brown color, but I think this spread was looking pretty nice after adding all the stationeries here. The layout of this spread is not going to be anything structured because I wanted to go with something different, and here I am sticking out a larger rating sticker in the top underneath the title, and I'm using some craft sticker cones washi tapes here and also some scrapbooking paper to add some colors into this spread. I'm adding a quote from this book, which is, if you think this story has sad ending, it's because it's not over yet. So basically, I think this quote touched me a lot, so I kept it on mind and also write it somewhere so that I can add it in the review page. Let's talk about this book a bit. This story is basically of a writer again, and here the writer had a very messy life, so she moved into another place. Then she found out her neighbor is basically her childhood crush, and here it starts this story. They kind of hanging out together, and then they started books together. They were basically inspiring each other while writing, and meanwhile they fall in love, and that's how the story starts. Even though the romance wasn't my cup of tea in this book, but I kind of like how everything was written and how the story was going, to be honest. And I think many of you who likes romantic novels or books will like it. So that's it, the 6th book that I read in September. And as I was reading and listening to a lot of books, I was thinking that I should go for the last book, which is a very small and very calming book. I wasn't thinking too much while I was listening to this book, and I chose this book because it was almost 4 hours of audiobook, and it kind of makes me stay concentrated while I was making some stickers or designs for my patrons. So I was listening to the Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. It's basically a very short story which has a father-daughter duo who runs a detective restaurant. They basically listen to their customers' description of a food, and they kind of replicate the text from the description, and that's the story begins and ends, finding some nostalgic food reviews from their customers. And that's the story, and it's basically a cozy mystery and urban fiction. So I basically like to finish my work in September with this calm story. And for the decorations, as very late to update my September reading journal, I had two of these books, which is the beach read and this one, left to update or write a review on it. So I just used the Patreon printable stickers, which I give to my patrons to use every month. If you don't know, I have a Patreon page where I make digital and physical rewards for my patrons. And basically, the sushi and maki illustrations are basically from February rewards for my patrons. So as I was making this spread on February last week, I was very thoughtful about making this with these food stickers which I made for my patrons, and also I used some soup and noodle stickers from the Patreon Happy Meal reward from last year's December, which is basically goes with this theme and the cover of this book. So I absolutely like how this whole spread turned out. I also tried my best to write the writer's name within some Japanese calligraphic font style, as you can see, and that's it, the whole spread. I kind of like last of these two spreads which I made in September because they are not structured and it was pretty clumsy, as you can see, but I like how these two spreads turned out. And let's just go through the whole flip through right now, because this video is going to be a little long, I believe, as I have read so many books here. And as you can see, I have read 7 books and I like each of them. I kind of rated every books about 3 or more stars because I enjoyed reading all of them a lot. Here the beach read spread is one of my favorite, and then the yellow face spread, and then the Kamogawa Food Detective spread. So that's it for this reading update, and I will try my best to make the next reading update, which is basically the 4th quarter reading update in 2024. Then we will just move on to my new yearly reading update. I don't know if I'm going to combine all 3 months, like January, February and March, because if I do that, I will at least have 6 books at this point. So I'm scared not to make too much longer videos anymore, because all of my videos are getting longer and longer. And so that's it. That's the whole video. I hope you like this. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel. That helps my channel, this small channel, a lot. And I'll see you in my next video. So until then, be happy, stay safe, and be healthy. Bye guys.